Please be seated. President, the court is now in session. This morning we will continue to hear the testimony of the witness, Pechui Chipsai, who will be questioned by the defense teams. The greffier, Mrs. Sakulvuthi, could you report the attendance of the individuals and parties to this proceeding? Sakulvuthi, good morning, Mr. President. All parties to the case are present except the accused Noon Chea, who is in the holding cell downstairs due to his health reason. As for the accused Insari, he is absent due to his health reason due to his limited waiver, letter of waiver E237 and 237/1. The accused waived his rights during the hearing of certain witnesses and civil parties, including TCW 507, who will be heard today, as well as TCCP 82, who will be heard after the conclusion of the testimony of this witness. The witness is present in the courtroom. As for the TCCP 82, is awaiting to be called by the chamber. President, thank you. Noon Chea defense team, have you received a report on the examination of Noon Chea conducted by the treating doctor at the ECCC detention facility?
Yes, Mr. President, indeed we have. Good morning to everyone in and around the courtroom to start with. We have received the report, and Noon Chea would like to request permission to follow the proceedings from his holding cell during the entirety of the day for the reasons as mentioned in the medical report, and we are in the process of preparing the waiver request, which will be submitted as soon as possible.
The chamber has heard the request made by Noon Chea through his counsel to follow the proceeding through a remote means for the entire day due to his health reason, as indicated in the report made by the treating doctor at the ECCC detention facility. In that report, which was made by Chea Kun TV, the treating doctor of Mr. Noon Chea, who confirmed that this morning Mr. Noon Chea has some medical reasons due to backache and diarrhea, and that he could not sleep at night, and he recommends that Noon Chea shall participate in the proceeding through a remote means from a holding cell downstairs. So the request by Noon Chea's defense is granted by the chamber so that Noon Chea can follow the proceedings through a remote means in the holding cells downstairs for the entire day proceeding. And as he himself requests to waive his direct presence in this courtroom, the defense team of Nuon Chea is required to deliver immediately the letter of waiver and the waiver request with the signature or the thumbprint of the accused Nuon Chea. And the AV unit you instructed to link the proceeding through the holding cell downstairs so that Nuon Chea can follow the proceeding. This applies for the entire day proceeding today. Any judges of the bench has question for this witness? Judge Lavaine, Judge, you may proceed.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good morning, Mr. Witness. I am Judge Jean-Marc Laverne. I have a certain number of questions to put to you in order to bring some clarifications to the answers you provided the court during your previous testimony. Now, due perhaps to lack of knowledge of the geographical region that you had referred to and that you are from, Siem Reap, you stated that you were working at the Pom Hor Security Center. Now, in April 1975, were you indeed employed at the security center of Pom Hor?
Yes, in 1975, I was a security staff at Pom Ro.
Est-ce que ce
Is Pom Hor Security Center located within the Chi Srem district?
The Pom Ro Security Center was located in Chi Krang district.
et le district de Chi Krang
And is Chi Krang sub-district located within Siem Reap province?
Yes, that is correct. Chi Krang district was located in Siem Reap, Udor, Mien Chey.
où était situé
Where was the office of the Chi Krang district located?
The Chi Krang office was located at the current Kampong Kdai market. It was located within those old buildings at the town center of the Kampong Kdai market.
donc l'autre
Just the other day, when you spoke of the Chi Krang market apartments, in fact, those apartments were located within Kampong Dre. Is this correct?
The Chi Krang market is the current Kampong Kdai market. It is one and the same. So the Chi Krang market is the Kampong Kdai market.
la ville de
Is Kampong Dre located some 60 kilometers from Siem Reap along National Road 6? Are we referring to the same location?
The Kampong Kdai market is about 60 kilometers from the Siem Reap provincial town.
et j'ai compris que
From what I understood, the zone that surrounds Kampong Dre was under Khmer Rouge control for a very long time, prior to April 1975, and that there were a certain number of cooperatives that had been operational for a certain period. When exactly did Kampong Day fall under the control of the Khmer Rouge?
Kampong Kadai was controlled by the Khmer Rouge starting from 1970, that is after the coup d'etat. That location was controlled by the Khmer Rouge.
Donc,
Therefore, when the Khmer Rouge took control of the area in 1970, were the residents of Kampong Kadai evacuated?
The people at Kampong Kadai, and only those Chinese Cambodians, were evacuated to the distant villages. That is, they were transferred to about 30 or 40 kilometers away from the Kampong Kadai market, but the majority of them were Chinese and civil servants, including teachers. They were also transferred.
est-ce qu'on vous...
Were you told why these civil servants and those of Chinese ethnicity were evacuated from Kampong Kadai?
I did not know the reason for the evacuation or why those people had been evacuated.
Vous nous avez parlé
Yesterday you told the court that there were soldiers and civil servants who had worked during the Lon Nol Republic were housed in Chikreng apartments, which we now gather to be in Kampong Kadai. Were those soldiers from Siem Reap, or did they come from the city or district of Kampong Kadai?
The public servants or the senior military personnel or some of the major provincial leaders were brought in from the Siem Reap provincial town, not from Kampong Kadai.
Donc, j'ai compris hier
I gathered that this was information that you had obtained from other witnesses, that you yourself had ascertained from other witnesses. But were you yourself, sir, in Kampong Kadai village and were a first-hand witness of the evacuation of these senior civil servants and soldiers?
I knew about the presence of the soldiers who had been evacuated from Siem Reap through people and as well as through those people who worked at the security, but I myself did not witness it.
est-ce que
Sir, were you told why those civil servants and soldiers were being evacuated from Siem Reap to Kampong Kadai, which is located some 60 kilometers from that area? Were you told why they were being taken from one place to another?
As for the reason, it was not clear. I only learned of it through the people and through those people who worked at the security office. I was told that they were the ones who betrayed the revolution, and for that reason they had been moved to be re-educated at the Kampong Kedai market. That's all I knew back then.
Est-ce que vous
At the time, during the period of democratic Kampuchea, were you in Siem Reap? Or did you hear about the demise of the population of Siem Reap? Were they forced to leave the city?
I cannot respond to this question as I was myself not clear.
Hier,
Yesterday, you stated that you had met with some of the evacuees. Where did the evacuees come from? Were they from Phnom Penh? Were they from Siem Reap? Or did they come from other regions of Cambodia?
I learned about the people who had been evacuated from Siem Reap or from Phnom Penh was through mouth from one person to another, and that's how I learned of that information. So it was an indirect information that I obtained through word of mouth.
vous, personnellement,
And you, sir, had you met with any of the evacuees? Did you talk to any of them?
I met those evacuees when I left the Khmer Rouge in 1970. I met those evacuees who came to reside in my village. But I couldn't recall how many of them that I met at the time. There were several, but I just cannot recall the exact number.
je me permets de vous poser une question.
Allow me to ask you a supplementary question just to make sure that we understand each other perfectly. You stated that you met with certain evacuees in 1970. Is that the precise date at which you met them, or did you meet with them only afterwards? So when exactly did you meet with those who were evacuated?
Allow me to respond. I met the evacuees after 1975. It was not in 1970 because in 1970 there was no evacuation yet. Evacuation only took place after 1975.
Quand on parle
When the April 17 people were referred to, was such a label designating only those who had been evacuated from Phnom Penh, or did it designate anyone who had been evacuated from a particular city, regardless of the city?
As for the fresh 17 April people, it designated for all people who had been evacuated throughout the country. It was meant for the whole lot, not just for a particular group or a province. So let me repeat, the Khmer rules designated that for all those evacuees, they were called the 17 April people.
Alors, cette population évacuée,
There was a segment of the population that had been evacuated in initial time. Within your district, were there any further evacuations? Were there any other further movements of the population? Were there people who, for example, who came from Phnom Penh forced to travel even further a subsequent time, or any other time that you may have been aware of?
I cannot actually respond precisely to your question, because during the evacuation I was still at the Pungro security office, so I learned of the news through the security staff, and I learned that in 1970 there was no 17 April people yet. Only the Chinese ethnicity had been evacuated from the market and the provincial towns to the outskirts. And later on, people from the provincial town of Siem Reap had been evacuated also to the outskirts. That's all how I learned of that information.
In April 1975, upon Khmer Rouge victory, what was the food situation like in your sector? Were there any problems concerning food rations or sustenance?
After 1975, there was difficulty with food rationed in the district. Those who had been evacuated, some of them died due to starvation, due to hard work, and the situation was difficult and terrible due to the lack of food.
et cette situation, monsieur,
Mr. Witness, was this a situation to which you were a first-hand witness? Or again, was this a scenario that had been reported to you?
I knew of that information through other sources, as I myself could not learn of it personally during the time that I worked with the Khmer Rouge.
est-ce que avant
Prior to April 1975, were there any families of Cham background who resided in your sector?
Prior to 1975, I did not know about the situation of a Cham-related families. I only knew of that information after 1975.
et qu'est-ce que vous avez su
And what exactly did you know or learn of after April 1975?
I knew that after 1975, the Cham people were evacuated through my village, that is the Pongro Kraum village, and they were designated to live among the houses of the local villagers, and they were forced to eat pork as well. So in order to survive, they had to follow the order. They had to do what they were asked or instructed to do. And the Cham people were living a terrible life back then.
Est-ce que vous savez d'où
Did you know exactly where those who were of Cham descent from?
As from where they had been evacuated from, I did not know, as I did not ask them about that, or I was not told of that information. I only knew that they had been evacuated to live amongst the Khmer people in my village.
Est-ce que vous avez
Sir, were you a direct witness of other discriminations practiced against certain categories or segments of the population? If so, which ones?
In regards to the discrimination against the 17 April people, or the Cham descent people, or the civil servants from the former regime who had been evacuated, I witnessed that they had been forced to engage in hard labor, to do the harvesting or carrying soil, to dig a canal or to build dams. And they were assigned to engage in difficult tasks or work. And if for those 17 April people, or the civil servants, or the former soldiers or policemen of the former regime, they would be monitored, and if they made any small mistake, they would be accused of it and would be killed.
The security center, the Pongro Security Center, was closed, you told us, in 1977. However, the discrimination against the populations you spoke about, did they continue after 1977?
To my observation, the discrimination was still there. There was no noticeable change in population segregation and discrimination. Even if I return back to the village, I also noticed that the 17 April people were subjected to hard labor, and they were provided with small food ration compared to the base people. That's what I observed at that time.
Well, I have a last question to put to you, witness. After the security center was closed in Pongro, was another security center created in the district? And what was this security center?
I could respond to this question based on the information I received from the people in the village. Following the closure of Pung Ro security office, it was then transferred and established at Kampung Dei location. I did not know the detail of that new security office, but what I learned from the people was that the security office was then moved to Kampung Dei Pagoda.
Thank you, witness, for all of this clarification.
Je n'ai pas de...
And I have no further questions to put to the witness.
The President, thank you. Now I hand over the floor to the defense team for Mr. Nguyen Chia to put the question to the witness. You may proceed. Counsel Sunnarun. Good morning, Mr. President. Good morning, Your Honors. And good morning, Mr. Chipsai. I am the National Defense Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia, and my name is Sunnarun. I have a few questions to ask you this morning. At the start, I would like to ask you about your personal background, particularly your educational background first. How many years of schoolings did you have? Response. I started schooling in the Sangkum Rihniyum era. I studied in Rasmai Sokun in Stung district, and I finished grade 4, and then there was a coup d'etat. Then I returned to my home village, residing with my family in Tumpole village, Chikrang district, Siem Reap province. Question. When you gave up schooling, you joined the revolutionary forces in 1972. Is my understanding correct? Hello. Response. That is correct. Question. When you joined army, yesterday you responded to the questions by the prosecutors and the civil party lawyers. You testified that you joined the Khmer Rouge Liberation Forces in Tangkok. At that time, in Tangkok, it was a hot battlefield, and the Khmer Rouge names its force as Chenla 2 or so. And then after that, you fled the army and you returned back to your hometown. Is that correct? Response. That is correct. I fled the Chenla 2 army, and we were fighting with the Lon Nol administration, and I fled the army and I returned to my hometown. Question. So, are you saying that at the time you gave up your position in the army, and when did you resume your function in the army again? Response. No, I did not serve in the army anymore, but instead I joined the security office. It was a Pungro security office. I never joined the army again.
ឯកសារដែលលោក
Question. According to the documents, the record of interview with the OCIJ, you said that you joined the security office because you at that time got lost and then you went off track and then you were arrested, and then after that you were assigned to be the clerk of the security office. Is it a fair summary of what you testify before the OCIJ? Response, that is correct. Question. In 1972, at that time you were around 17 or 18 years of age, and you joined the revolutionary force. Did you join the army at that time at your own will, or were there any people inducted you to the military forces? Response. In 1972, I did not intend to join with the Khmer Rouge forces. At that time, I left my parents because I wanted to continue my study in Siem Reap city. But unfortunately, I could not pursue my study. Then I went on to look for my grandparents in Kothom. Then when I reached Tang Krasang, which was about halfway to my grandparents' place, the Khmer Rouge soldier accused me of being the undercover agent. So they arrested me and placed me under custody somewhere around Santuk Mountain. And then later on, they inducted me into their forces. But it was not from my own will of joining this Khmer Rouge force.
អរគុណ
In 1974, according to your statement with the OCIJ, you testify that there were a lot of killings, and those who were killed were accused of bandits, and they ranged from children to women. So I would like to know whether or not you witnessed the killing of those women and children, or you simply overheard it from others. Response. The report concerning the killing in 1974, I witnessed it myself. They frog-marched the prisoners whom they accused of being the bandits, were placed in security office, Pungro security office. They placed them or imprisoned them in a separate cell because they were destined to be executed. So they were separated from other prisoners. For example, prisoners of immoral wrongdoing were imprisoned in different cells. Question. I would like to clarify a bit. You said that among those prisoners there were children and women. Were they the Khmer Rouge soldiers who charged them of being bandits? Response. Yes, the Khmer Rouge soldiers who alleged them of being the bandits. And they told security office at Pungro district that those people took refuge in the forest. And they also at times came to the village and stole the villagers' food stuff. So, because they took refuge in the forest, the Khmer Rouge soldier accused them of being bandits.
ពេលនោះ
Question. At the time when the Khmer Rouge soldier accused them, both women and children, as a bandit, where were you at the time? Were you also somewhere among those prisoners who were both women and children, or you were somewhere else?
បាទខ្ញុំ
Response. At the time, I was among the security officers, and those prisoners were being imprisoned in the Pungro security office, and they were shackled, and they told them that the prisoner were to be placed in a separate cells from others.
សំណួរខ្ញុំបន្តទៅទៀត
Question. You told the OCIJ that following the 17th of April 1975, I saw they evacuate soldiers and the former official of Lon Nol administration from Siem Reap, and those people were temporarily housed at Chikrang district. And then later on, those people were taken away to be executed, but you did not know where those people were killed exactly. So my question to you is, did you see the execution of those former officials and soldiers by your own eyes, or you only overheard it from others?
បាទសំណួរ
Response. I knew this information from the security officers of Pungro district who had a relation with the soldiers. I did not know whether they were the soldier attached to the district, but those security officers said that they joined force with the military, and they told me that those people who were evacuated out of the city of Siem Reap were executed. No one was spared, including their wives and children. Question. So, is it fair to say that you only heard from others, you did not witness the killing by yourself? Is that correct?
បាទគឺ
Yes, that is correct. Those officers who were involved with the military officers told me about the execution, and I think that that information was reliable.
លោកធ្វើការ
You were working at the Pungro security office, and your supervisor was Tawan. And then later on, Takun came to take the place of Tawan after Tawan was arrested. Did you witness the arrest of Tawan? Or did you only overhear from others? Or could it be the case that Tawan was transferred to take charge of a position elsewhere? I would like to ask you to clarify whether or not Tawan was actually arrested or he was merely transferred, and how did you know this information?
ជប់
Response. Tawan was arrested on charge of betraying the organization, but I did not witness the arrest. I heard it from others. Actually, he was not arrested immediately, but He was first transferred to be in charge of the construction of water reservoir because he was a technician earlier on. So Khmer Rouge transferred him to take charge of constructing Suong Dam. And later on, the Khmer Rouge arrested him. And I did not witness the arrest by myself. I only heard it from the security officers. They told me that Tavan was actually arrested by the Khmer Rouge. In document D125/127, relevant ERN 00224054, English 00225113. I do not have the relevant ERN page in French. You told the investigators that they killed people using the stick, striking the head of the prisoners, and once they fell down, they used the knife to cut through their throat, and then they push the dead body into the holes, and then after that they would cover the graves with earth. I would like to ask you once again whether or not you witnessed the killing of this nature by your own eye.
នេះចំពោះការឃើញគឺខ្ញុំមិន
Response. Well, I did not witness it by my own eyes because the Khmer Rouge would not allow anyone to go close to that area. I merely knew that information about from those officers who were involved in that activities. They told me, and I was not in the position to go close to that, so I simply knew from their subordinates who were involved in the execution of such activities. Are you saying that you heard it from others and then you told the investigator of the OCIJ? So it is clear that you did not witness it by your own eyes. You only overheard it from others. You were telling the OCIJs, are you certain that what you heard was accurate and correct? Response. To my knowledge, I believe that what they told me was true, because after the regimes, there were mass graves, and we all saw those mass graves. And following 1979, the people in that area exhumed those mass graves, and then they discovered the bones and skull in those mass graves. So what they have told me must have been true and correct. In document D83, Annex 0012, ERN 0081287, English 00124158, and French 00779387. it was an interview, your interview with Monsieur Locard. In that interview, you told Locard that Tavon cut open the stomach of the prisoners, and then he took the
ក៏លោកលើកគេថា
gallbladder of the prisoners in order to put it into his wine jar. Did you witness this yourself, or you only heard it from others?
ចំពោះលោកនិយាយ
Response: I only heard it from others. I did not see it by myself.
អ្នកណាប្រាប់លោកពេលនោះ
Who told you at the time about that?
តាមឈ្មោះ
He was one of the villagers from Pungro village. He saw Tavon, and he was asked by Tavon to look for the Khmer gene, rice genes, so that he could put the gallbladder of the prisoner, which he cut off the body of the executed prisoner in. Question: in the same document, you told Hungry Loga that in that document, actually, you wrote your name with some abbreviation, a sort of abbreviation, and then followed by Chipsai. What do you mean by that abbreviation? Can you elaborate?
ចំពោះការ
Response: No, actually, I did not know how Hungry Loga wrote my names. Actually, he was the one who prepared this interview and written record, because at that time, when he was conducting interview with me, there were two interpreters. He conducted interview in French, and I had to respond to him through interpreters. And if you ask me to elaborate how he wrote my names, I did not know. It was up to him who, wrote that in that way. Question: if you did you read it over again after Hungry Loga finished the interview, and would you accept what Hungry Loga wrote in his record if you did not even read it? Do you find it acceptable to date?
ខ្ញុំទទួលយក
Response: I once again wish to tell the court that I categorically reject the statement that my younger brother joined the Khmer Rouge forces when he was 8 years old. That was the misstatement or misrepresentation of what I said. So I don't find this portion of the record unacceptable.
សំណួរ
Question: in your question and answer throughout the interview with Hungry Loga, did you only reject the portion which you mentioned just now, and as well as the abbreviation of your name? You say that you only reject the report or the record of your interview on these two particular points, or are you rejecting the entire record of your interview? President, witness, please hold on. Mr. Prosecutor, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. I think this question is inappropriate because the witness was not asked by the OCIJ investigators or in his trial testimony to read his entire statement and confirm the accuracy of every statement. I asked about particular parts of the interview, and he indicated whether they were accurate or not. If counsel has particular parts of the interview that he wishes to ask the witness to confirm, he can do that. But the witness has not been provided an opportunity to read the entire interview, which is about 8 pages, so I think it's inappropriate to put a question such as that.
Counsel Sonaran, I would like to respond to the objection by the prosecutor. The prosecutor asked a lot of questions based on the interview with Hungry Logar, and I think that the prosecutor made use of the times at the time. The President. The objection and grounds of objection by the prosecutors are valid and thus sustained. So, counsel is advised to revisit your questions. If you are going to quote the portion of the interview of this witness with Mr. Hungry Logar, you may of course ask questions based on this interview, but if you ask any specific point, for example the errors in spelling of names or so in the interview, sometimes the spelling mistake was made by Mr. Hungry Logar, so the witness has nothing to do with that. And if you want to ask, you can ask based on the substance of that interview. Of course, you can quote the substance of that interview. And Mr. Hungry Logar recorded his interview with the witness in his record. So you can, of course, based on this report and ask questions to the witness. Counsel. Thank you, Mr. President, for your guidance.
Allow me to continue my questioning. You were interviewed by Hungry Logar, and in the Khmer spelling as Chief said, you confessed that you executed 2 prisoners and beat prisoners during the interrogation session. Do you stand by that statement? Response. I do not stand by that statement. However, I knew that I beat the prisoners, but I never killed any prisoner because I was not trusted by the Khmer rules. For that reason, I cannot stand by that statement. Questioned. You said that you did beat the prisoners, but you did not kill them. How many prisoners did you beat? Response. I beat the prisoner during the interrogation. As for the number of prisoners, I cannot recall. Questioned in your written record of interview with the OCIJ, that is document D125/1-7. EN 00224054 and English 00225213. Yesterday, in your response to the prosecutor, you said that you witnessed the killings only one time. The question is, what was the killing scene like? What did they do before they were killed, and what happened after they were killed? And at which location, can you tell us? Response. As for the killing of the prisoners by the Khmer Rouge, before the prisoners were killed, they would be taken to the pit, and the pit had already been dug in advance. And they were not killed near the detention site. It was at a location about 1 kilometer away from the detention site. They already had the clamps there, and prisoners were tied, and they were blindfolded with a black cloth. And upon arrival, they were ordered to kneel, and they used the club to beat the prisoners. And when the prisoners died, their throats were cut, and they would be thrown into the pit. And after that, they covered the pit. Question. Were the prisoners killed during the daytime or the night time? Response. From what I was told by the Khmer Rouge executioners, they were mostly killed during the daytime. Question. When the prisoners were taken to be killed, did you go and witness the killing, or did you hear it through somebody else's word? Response. Mostly I heard it through other people who were the one who walked the prisoners. And they were known as the members of the Youth League of the Khmer Rouge. And they told me after the killing of those prisoners. Question. For every killing of the prisoners from the Pongro Security Center, did the executioners always tell you after they return from the killing? Response. No, not every time. Sometimes they told me. In fact, sometimes when they were speaking with one another, and I was sitting nearby, and I heard of what they said and what they did. So that's how I learned of the information. They were speaking among themselves. I myself did not ask them those questions. Thank you. This is my last question to you. You worked as a clerk of the Pongro Security Center. How long did you perform that duty? And after that, what else did you do? Response. I worked at the Pungro Security Center starting from 1973 until 1977. At that time, people there were accused of betrayal by the Khmer Rouge. They had been arrested, and I told them that I was the clerk, so then they sent me back to live in the village. Since then, I did not engage in any specific role. I was in the mobile unit after 1977. Question. You worked with the Khmer Rouge first as a soldier, then you worked in the security center. Until what year did you stop working for the Khmer Rouge? Response. I stopped working for the Khmer Rouge in 1977. I did not have any more role in the Khmer Rouge after that year. I became a villager in the cooperative. So I was then under the control of the Khmer Rouge in the cooperative. Question. In what year, what village were you residing in that year? Did you move to another village or do you reside in your native village? Response. After I stopped working for the Khmer Rouge in 1977, I moved to my native village. That is Pung Ro village, Pung Ro Kraum district in Siem Reap. So I moved to my native village. Question. You worked within the framework of the Party of the Democratic Cambodia starting from 1972 to 1977, that is for a period of 5 years. In your response to the prosecution, then to the lead co-lawyers, you mostly said that you refer to them as they. Can you enlighten us on the word they that you use to refer to those people? Response. The word they that I use refers to the Khmer Rouge. And that's what I meant. Counsel, thank you, Mr. President. I do not have any further question for this witness, and I'd like to cede my floor to my international colleague. President, International Council, you may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning to you, Mr. Pechu Chipse. I am Jasper Pauw. I'm International Counsel for Mr. Nguyen Chia, and I will ask you some further questions on the topic that you have been testifying on for the past 2 days. I will speak slowly to avoid confusion, but if there's a question you don't understand, please ask me to clarify. And my first question relates to the situation at Chi Krang markets, where, according to you, Lon Nol soldiers were detained in old concrete houses. We have already established this morning that the Chi Krang market is indeed the Kampong Kedai market. And my question to you is the following. You have testified that both Lon Nol soldiers and former Lon Nol government officials were transported from the Chikreng market to be executed. My question is the following. How do you know it was both Lon Nol soldiers and former Lon Nol government officials?
Your question is related to the evacuation of the people to the Kampong Kadai market and whether they were the former government officers or soldiers who had been evacuated by the Khmer Rouge. I learned of that information through the Khmer Rouge who worked at the Pongro Security Center. I was told by them, as well as I learned of it through the villagers. As whether I witnessed it personally, I did not. I only heard of that information through other people that the Lon Nol government officers had been transported to the Kampong Kadai market and that later on they were executed. I learned of that later part by the Khmer Rouge who worked at the Pongro Security Center.
So the Khmer Rouge soldiers that worked at the Pongro Security Center told you about the former Lon Nol government officials that were detained in the Chikreng market. Is that a fair summary of your answer?
What I just said is correct.
And to avoid confusion, you were also told about the detained Lon Nol government officials by the villagers that you just mentioned?
Could you please repeat your question? You talk about the detention of the people. Can you specify the location?
My apologies, I'll be more specific. Did the villagers also tell you about the Lon Nol government officials that were detained at the Chikreng market?
The villagers also told me, as for those people who took away the Lon Nol soldiers, I mean those who worked at the Pongro Security Center, also told me about that.
And do you remember how many of the Khmer Rouge soldiers that were affiliated with the Pongro Security Center told you about the Lon Nol government officials being detained in the markets at Chikreng and then were later executed? So how many soldiers told you about this?
As for the number, I cannot recall it exactly. Did you mean that how many people who worked at the Pongro Security Center who told me? Could you please rephrase your questions since I am really unclear on it?
Indeed, I would like you to tell the trial chamber, if you remember, how many soldiers at the Pongro Security Center told you about the former Lon Nol officials that were detained in the Chikrang market? And if you do not remember, please tell us whether it was 1, 2, 3, or more.
President, witness, please wait. The prosecution, you may proceed.
Yes, Mr. President, I don't know whether counsel just misphrased his question. The witness has not indicated that the people who worked at the security office were soldiers. He's distinguished between soldiers and security personnel at the office. So I think that may be the source of the confusion, and we'd object to the question as presently phrased.
I am happy to rephrase the question, and there might be some confusion indeed. Mr. Witness, you stated that you were told by people working at the Pongro Security Center about the detention of former Lon Nol government officials at the Chikrang market. Do you remember how many of these people that were working at the security center told you about the detention of the Lon Nol government officials?
As to the number of those who worked at the security center and who told me, there were about 3 of them. Let's say there were 3 of them who told me about the events that they went with the Khmer Rouge soldiers.
And do you remember the names of the 3 staff members of the Pongro Security Center that told you about this?
I cannot recall the 3 names now. As you know, it has been several years already. I can recall their names.
And he also stated that villagers told you about the detention of former Lon Nol government officials at Chikrang market. Could you tell us how many villagers told you about this detention?
As for the villagers who told me about the Lon Nol soldiers, I cannot recall the exact figure of those villagers, as my memory so far doesn't serve me that well.
Can you give us an estimate? Would it have been 1 or 2 villagers or more?
I can say that there are more than 2. There were several, in fact, but I just cannot put the exact word to the figure.
I'm sorry, I just misheard it in my headphones. Did you say there would be more than 2, or could you correct me if I'm wrong?
Yes, there were several people who told me, but as I said earlier, I cannot give you the exact figure as to the number of those villagers, because I cannot recall them clearly. But there were several of them who told me about that.
So, would it be a fair summary of your answer to say that three staff members at the Pongro Security Center, as well as several villagers, told you about the fact that former Lon Nol government employees were detained at Chikrang Market and were later executed? Is that a fair summary of your answer?
Yes, that summary is fair.
You have also spoken about trucks that took away the former Lon Nol soldiers and government employees. And you have also stated that you did not personally see those trucks. Could you tell me who told you that these individuals were indeed taken away in trucks?
Regarding the transportation of soldiers, I was told by the villagers that soldiers were transported to Tumnuk Makak and they were executed there. That was the words I was told by the villagers.
And do you remember how many villagers told you about this, about the transportation by trucks of these individuals?
I cannot recall that. For that reason, I cannot give you the exact figure.
And do you remember the names of some of the villagers that told you about this event where trucks were used to transport these people?
When it comes to names, it is even worse. I cannot recall any of those names. For that reason, I cannot respond to this question.
And when you speak about villagers, which village are you talking about? Are you speaking about one specific village, or are you speaking about several villages where these villagers came from?
I meant the Pungro villagers of the Pungro Kram commune, Chikrang district. So I referred to one village only.
And was that the village where you were living at during the time that you were working at Pongro Security Center?
No, it was not the village that I was living in at the time. It was the village near the security center. It was about 3 kilometers away from the security center. So it was different from the village that I lived in, although we live in the same commune and district.
So how far away was the village you were living in from the village that these villagers came from? Can you give us an estimate?
I cannot give you a precise answer. However, I can give you an estimation. The distance from the village I live to the Pongro village is about 5 kilometers.
You have stated, and I'm moving to a new topic just to clarify. You have stated that the security center was abolished or shut down in 1977. Do you know why it was shut down?
I knew the reason for the shutdown. The people who worked in that security center were accused of betrayal by the Khmer Rouge. And that was not only for the Pongro security center. The accusation was nationwide, because from one group to another, the Khmer Rouge always accused of the previous group of betrayal. So Takun was accused of being betrayed, and he was arrested as well. So I know that the reason for the center to be shut down because of that accusation by the Khmer Rouge of betrayal.
And when you speak of betrayal, do you know what sort of betrayal he was accused of? What was he accused of having done or not having done?
I did not know exactly the nature of the accusation. I was a low-level staff, and that's all I knew, that the accusation was of the betrayal. So all the staff working at the Pongro Security Center had their names listed, and the list would be sent to the upper echelon. And after that, the prisoners were released and the center was abandoned.
Other witnesses have declared about this period, and they also testify that Tasok and Tasan arrested Tavon, Takun and Tanit, and they state that Tasok and Tasan then encouraged the people to track down and kill the authorities in the villages and sub-districts who had caused people to starve to death. My question to you is, at that time, did you hear people speak about this? Were certain Khmer Rouge authorities being prosecuted because they had let people starve to death?
ចំពោះហេតុការណ៍
For this particular incident, I did not know for sure because it was the matter handled by the Khmer Rouge. The President. Thank you, Counsel, and thank you, witness. The time is now appropriate for adjournment. The Chamber will adjourn for 20 minutes, and we will resume at 10 to 11. Court officers is instructed to arrange the holding room for the witness and his duty counsel during the break and have them back in this courtroom by 10 to 11. The court is now adjourned. All rise.